Hello everyone, this is Endgame Arts with another boxing of the offline product game review. This is Song of Horror for the PlayStation 4, but being played and tested on my PlayStation 5. To jump right into it, this physical copy here comes with the update version 1.02 right on the disc, but sadly there was an update available. This update size was 625 megabytes big and will take you to version 1.03 since the time of this video. Now, all this update said is that it did improvements for the user's experience. Don't know exactly what they mean by that, but like always, I play all my games completely offline with an unregistered account, and I didn't experience any massive game-breaking bugs or issues, or anything that prevented me from progressing. There were some noticeable hiccups and oddities, and I will explain in more detail in a bit, but like always, I played without that update, and I didn't have any issues that prevented me from beating the game, which is what I did. Now, as well, I was still unlocking trophies with my unregistered account. As well, I want to point out this Song of Horror physical copy was distributed by Limit Run Games. They're no longer distributing a physical copy for the Western audience. Now, there might be some third-party stores that selling physical copies for it, but I do know there is a PAL version as well as a Japanese version. And I do believe the Japanese version does support English. So if you can't find this Western version, you might want to look into the PAL version or the Japan version if you're interested in the game. Now, to go into my experience of the game, there are some oddities and little hiccups here and there, but as I said, nothing that prevented me from progressing or interrupting my experience in a massive way. Now, one of the first ones I immediately noticed in my playthrough is that there's a mechanic in the game where you hide from the creature, and every time I got done hiding from the creature and playing this little mini game, my character would auto sprint. There's a button, you hold down the L2 button to start sprinting, and for some reason my character, every time I got out of hiding, my character would just keep sprinting. The only way I was able to fix this was just tapping the L2 button to tell it to stop sprinting. I thought this was some kind of like mechanic in the game where you can turn it on auto sprint, but I tried to replicate the same stuff I did during the hiding phase minigame, and it would not auto lock sprinting. So it's clearly some kind of hiccup bug that happens after you've hid from the monster during that little minigame. As well as there were some noticeable frame drops. I can't rightly say if this game runs at 30 or 60. I think it's 30, but again, I'm not a stickler for these kinds of things. I don't strictly notice that, and this game isn't a high-performance game, so it doesn't really require 60 frames if it's not, but I did notice some frame rate stuttering and skipping and stuff like that in certain moments in the game. Not a big issue. Like I said, this game is not a twitch shooter or an action platformer or anything like that. It's a very slow pace and horror game, if you will. It's not a, walking survival simulator or something like that, or a haunted house kind of style where you just walk in between room and room and basically boo and you go and you move on to the next room. There's definitely some survival mechanics in the game. So that frame rate drop could be a hindrance, but it's very, very unlikely. At least I didn't experience it. The next little weird hiccup was that I looked out a window, and for some reason, what I was supposed to be looking at was outside the window, but I guess there's some kind of coding issue, and instead of looking out the window, I would look at a bed. And it's a bed in a totally different other part of this building. It's not even in the same building. It's in a totally different building. And I would look at that window, and somehow it would look at that bed. It was really weird. It cracked me up. I was like, what am I looking at? This looks familiar. Why am I looking at this at the window? It was so confused, and then I realized it was a bug, and it was just looking at the wrong thing. Thankfully, this isn't required to progress. It was just some kind of, a little dialogue the character would provide if you looked out this window. And she does provide it, you won't be able to see anything because you're looking at a bed. Next one was that this one's a bit odd, but there are look points, and you basically use your right joystick to move your head up and down, left and right, and that's where you point your light, and you use that to be able to look at points of interests. There were times where this can be very clumsy in terms of trying to look at specific stuff, especially stuff that's really high, and sometimes really low. And the character, you had to stand in these specific positions, and there was this one time I was trying to look at something, and she just would not look at it. Like, it would pop up real quick to press X, then go away. And for the life of me, I know I checked this area in the game. This could have been a bug. There was a point we had to look through clothes for a specific item. I looked at these clothes, and I went through the entire place and looked at all the clothes, and I did not have the event thing that was supposed to happen. Well, I took a break from the game. I just closed out the application and just did a few things and reboot the game back up, reloaded my save, and all of a sudden these clothes, I swear I looked at them, whereas treating like I didn't look at them. So whereas I looked at them, I got the event and I got the item. So that could have been a game-breaking moment in the game. I don't know what happened with that. If you say that happens to you, if you swear you've looked at all the clothes in this apartment, close out the application and then reboot it back up, it may fix the issue. At least that was the only noteworthy time. And I might have been wrong. I may have not looked at that close. I could have swore I did. Though, the next one is that during a cutscene, the game was supposed to like play out this cutscene, and the screen stayed completely white, where I could not see what was the character looking at during this cutscene. There's just, I guess the transitioning moment, the transition white, did some effect, and it just stayed on the screen. Luckily, I did look up the video. It wasn't that crucial of a moment because it was just normal, like a little spooky moment in the game, so it wasn't crucial. But disappointing to have a spooky moment get interrupted by just having a pure white screen on the screen, as well as some audio bugs here and there. Mostly audio syncing, where during the cutscenes and stuff like that, where the audio is not lining up, or a bang or a jump scare was supposed to have audio, and it just was out of sync with when the thing happened and when the sound happened. It didn't destroy the atmosphere. It wasn't that big of a deal, but it was just noteworthy. It's my job. I gotta note all this stuff down, little hiccups and bugs and stuff like that. That was a little disappointing. I mean, it's always disappointing when audio is not synced up with the game, because audio plays a big part, especially in a horror game. So when that's not working right, it can interrupt the flow of the horror and atmosphere experience of the game. Next one, this was a bit odd. There was a event moment again where you're supposed to do some surviving, and I was in one room, and all of a sudden it teleported me to another room. It wasn't super far away, but it was like another 3 more rooms away, to teleport me to that room to do the event. I was so confused of what was going on and where I was, until I realized that the game teleported me out of one room to this other room to do the event that was supposed to happen. It's a random event. It's not like a story event where it's supposed to trigger. This could happen at any moment. I guess the game bugged out and triggered that event, but even though I wasn't in that room, it shot me over to that room to do the event, to survive the onslaught of the darkness. It was just so jarring. It only happened once, and it happened at the monk museum or religious temple place, and it was just so jarring. That was weird. That was probably the biggest, like, wow, that was a bug totally moment. And of course, some graphical bugs, some lighting effects, and certain character models. It's got some weird lighting and graphical bugs issues and stuff like that. And it was just more chuckle because it just looked funny at certain moments. But like I said, the overall experience was not destroyed. Now, that was a lot to ramble off, and there could have been probably more. I just maybe got lucky, and maybe there could have been some more game-locking progressive moments. I didn't experience that. I did beat the game, and I did rather enjoy Song of Horror. It was a different kind of feel of a horror game. I can't go into it in massive details because I want to try to avoid spoilers in the videos and content to not ruin anything. Basically, you play as a character who gets called to look for another person, and this person received an item which is a music box, and basically the Song of Horror, like in the name of the game, and then all the events trigger. And basically now you're trying to find a way to survive and try to fix this issue with the Song of Horror. I don't want to go into too much details, but the main selling point of the game is that the game does have a form of permanent death, where you play as particular set characters you get to pick and choose, and when that character dies, that character is permanently dead. And then you can probably, if all 4 of your characters, or whatever number of characters you have, die, then you have to restart that episode all over. Now, this was an interesting mechanic because it did make me feel very connected to that character, that I wanted to keep that character survive, to live and everything. And it definitely made the fear moments, the survival moments, way more tense, knowing that there was no checkpoint. There was no reloading my save. There was that if I mess up, this character is dead. It was definitely a different experience, but I can see some people getting frustrated with that because then, let's say you're trying to just lightly play, or you're just trying to enjoy the story, and then you have permanent death, and then it's not for everyone. Thankfully, there's some setting modes or difficulty modes for people who may be able to make that experience not as punishing, but it was an interesting idea. It didn't really add anything to the experience because it didn't like affect the story flow or anything like that because there was a set story. It's just these characters are just part of the journey of your journey of understanding what's going on. Though what was disappointing is that some of these characters you get to play as were very just offshoot. Like, I don't know where and how they really fit in. I wish there was a little bit more explanation of why these characters are here. Some of them make sense, but there was a few of them where I was like, okay, why is this person here? And why are they not immediately turning around and running out of this house or building or place? Because, man, you're committed to your job if you're going to be surviving this. There's many interesting ideas about the game, and some people complain about the QTEs, which I don't agree that they're QTEs. They're more like mini games, and they functioned, they worked, and they were enjoyable. They're very stressful the first time they happen because you don't know exactly what you need to do, and you got permanent death, but it did function and it did add to the element. I'm glad it wasn't your typical monster stalking the halls and you gotta hide and wait for it to go away. There was a little bit more gameplay involvement and engagement. I did enjoy that. And it was overall a pretty good story and ideas. Graphically, I thought it looked nice, and the music and gameplay all functioned. It was a little janky at moments, but remember, this is an indie game, and they did a pretty good job. Highly recommend it if you're a survival horror fan. It's not perfect, it got some hiccups and some issues, but then it's to be expected from a lower budget and a smaller title from studios. And for a third-person style game, as well as fixed camera angles, it was a very nice welcome. I really enjoyed the game. I'm glad I finally sat down and played this game, and it's just one of those games I definitely can see myself coming back to, and I can highly recommend it to other people who are interested in survival horror games. Don't expect perfection. Don't expect everything to be falling in line like a Resident Evil game, big AAA budget style game. Expect that everything is not going to be perfectly smooth. Now, granted, I didn't experience any game-breaking bugs or issues, but again, your mileage could vary. But in the end, thank you all so much for watching. I will try to provide links down in the description if you're interested in a copy. Highly really recommend it. It's definitely an interesting game. I know nothing about the PAL Japan version, if they're identical to this Western produced version from Limit Run Games. Again, this is distributed by Limit Run. It is not a physical copy from Limit Run. There is a difference. So like always, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next unboxing video. Bye-bye!